I'm Brandon from My Seminary Life, and this is my non-seminary reading list recommendations. But before we get into today's list, please, if you haven't yet already, subscribe and enable notifications to always on so you never miss a new video. Hit that like button and drop in the comments to answer this video's question: what books have made a profound impact in your spiritual journey? I want some reading material, please, because we're always all looking for more reading material. That's why we're here for this video, because a while back I did a video where I talked about each one of the classes I took in seminary and one book from each of the classes that I think would be good for people to go read for themselves, to educate themselves and to continue to grow in their love for God and to be better equipped for ministry. And if you want to check out that list of books, you can go in the link, or you find a link in the description of this episode to the resources page on the My Seminary Life website that has all of those books, plus a few additional ones that we've covered here on the show, and links to Amazon for each one of those books so you can pick it up. Today, we're going to be talking about non-seminary reading list recommendations, books that have made a profound impact in my spiritual journey that I didn't read as part of seminary. And this is one of those instances where I get to bring up something I talk about every once in a while here on the show, a disclaimer I throw out in the podcast every once in a while, the fact that I reserve the right to change my mind later. I think that people should be learning and growing and be open to the idea that maybe they knew something in the past that wasn't necessarily the most accurate or was skewed or whatever it may be, and to have a posture of learning and growing means that there's going to be times where you look back and go, I don't necessarily think that way anymore. I don't agree with that anymore. I don't believe that anymore. And with this reading list, even though these books, they're all positive. These are all books that have made a positive impact in my spiritual journey. What's interesting is that there are some that I don't necessarily fully endorse. Even though I love these books and they made such a big impact on my life, I don't necessarily fully endorse them. And in some cases, I don't necessarily fully endorse the authors. I'll give you 2 examples right off the bat as we get this list of 5 additional books. I don't know if I said that yet or not. 5 additional books that I think you should go check out. We learn, we grow, we change. And so I think these books are still worth going out and reading for yourself, but maybe read it cautiously. And just to get it started, maybe just to give an example, it would be Wild at Heart by John Eldredge. I read this book when I was in college, and not part of my college education. I was just in college when I read it, and I loved it. I loved this book. All the guys were reading it in my dorm. I marked it up. I think I've read it like 2 or 3 times by this point in time, and came at a very important time in my life where I was going through a gender identity crisis. I like many people who grew up in church. Maybe I'm stereotyping here a little bit. Like many guys who grew up in church, I was obsessed with leadership and masculine identity. I feel like those are just 2 things that go hand in hand with a lot of church boys who are just in it their whole life. And I have found a handful of good leadership material. I have found a handful of good masculine identity material. But as time has gone on, I've actually have gotten rid of a lot of it because I've beaten this drum to death. When it comes to leadership, there's nothing new under the sun. It's just recycled information constantly with different illustrations and different catchy words to do the same thing. It's all the same, basically. But when it comes to masculine identity stuff, in more recent history, I have come to realize that we have a weird idol and obsession when it comes to gender identities in the church. Gender roles, maybe more specifically, gender roles in the church of what is, quote, biblical masculine roles and feminine roles. And although I think exploring what makes a man is a good thing for some person to do, and even understanding what makes a woman is important for someone to do as well. I think there is an unhealthy obsession within the church on these areas, and that a lot of the conclusions are not so much rooted in scripture, but in a very like conservatively minded, like 1950s white America with the Bible to try and support it. All of that to say, though, this book made an important impact in my life as I was trying to just get my head on straight. I think for me to get where I am right now, I had to read this book. And I'm thankful that I did read this book. And I think it's still worth checking out, especially if you are a young man in the faith going through a similar situation that I was, of like just trying to understand like your place. I think it is a helpful tool to help you understand your place in all of this. But it's not the Bible. And I love John Eldredge. I still think he's a great guy, but he doesn't know everything. Great writer, probably one of my favorite. The thing about this list is that all of these people, I do really like their writing style. And I do like John Eldredge's writing style particularly. So that would be the first one, is Wild at Heart by Eldredge. Coming in next, Bonhoeffer by Eric Metaxas. So this is one where I can't necessarily like fully endorse Metaxas anymore. Brilliant man. I like him a lot, but unfortunately seems to have kind of gone a certain direction in 2020 that I did not go that direction as he did. However, I do like a lot of his earlier books, especially his biographies. Amazing Grace, Martin Luther, Bonhoeffer. I do like his writing as well. I do like his writing style. And this book is what really got me into Dietrich Bonhoeffer. I had just kind of known of him up until that point, and this book really got me into. We do not have the Summer of Bonhoeffer. I'll put it this way. We do not have the Summer of Bonhoeffer series like we did last year without me reading this biography. That is how profound this book is. You know, something that I read 10 years ago, maybe give or take 10 years ago, directly affects a series that we did last year. So it is an important book, and it is the book that caused me to fall in love with Dietrich Bonhoeffer and his ministry and his writings. But don't necessarily fully endorse Metaxas. The book itself it's a big read. It is a big, hefty boy, but it's a good read. I appreciate the work that Eric Metaxas put into getting this book together. It also is a bit slanted. Pastor Will and I talked about that a little bit in the Why Study Bonhoeffer episode. But yeah, if you haven't read it, you're going to have to devote some time to it, but it is worth checking out. So with a few of the I like these books, but out of the way, here's one that I don't have to say but to. Surprised by Joy by C.S. Lewis. And one thing you're going to conclude here in a moment is that I clearly like biographies. I do read a lot of biographies because there's another biography on this list. And Surprised by Joy by C.S. Lewis, it's really hard. It's hard for me to say what book should you go read if you've never read C.S. Lewis before. And it's because he has such a wide range of topics, a wide range of reading level with his writing, that it's hard for me to say this is the thing you should go read first. Because although it may seem like the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is the correct answer, maybe somebody doesn't like fiction. Maybe somebody doesn't like fantasy. You know, it's hard for me to say what book do you go read first when it comes to C.S. Lewis. Personally, though, this is my favorite one. I love a lot of Lewis's books, but I really like Surprised by Joy. I read it after I took the class on C.S. Lewis. We did have to read like a blip from this book, that specifically the part where Lewis defines what joy is. And but I then, like, that following, I think it was like the following summer, I got a copy and read it for myself. And I was already like really into C.S. Lewis, but this was like what really drew me in. This writing of Lewis, and just seeing his spiritual journey mapped out the way that he did, kind of in a old school confession style, like Augustine. It was just, that is what made me like, that's what drew me to the man. I liked maybe that's the way to put it. I liked the fantasy world of Lewis. I liked the theological writings of Lewis. This is what made me like C.S. Lewis, was reading his spiritual memoir, Surprised by Joy. Another spiritual memoir, maybe a bit of a deep cut, Blue Like Jazz by Donald Miller. So I had a professor in college who hated this book. He disliked this book so much, and talked about how much he disliked this book so much. Keep in mind, I was in college in like the 2010s, and this book came out in like the early 2000s. So he's like sitting on a grudge for like 10 years by this point, give or take. And so I was at like a used bookstore randomly one day and found a copy of it for like $2 or something. So I was like, okay, bet. Let's see just how like evil and maniacal this book is. And I got done with it, and I was like, wait, what was the problem? Like, what's wrong here? My professor's problem with the book is that he finds this to be like one of the big stepping stones into postmodern, especially in Christian thought of postmodernism. To me, and looking back retrospectively on my spiritual journey, this is the book that actually kind of helped pivot me away from being like the staunch conservative theological person that I was, to this more like moderate, like wanting to seek and learn and listen and be reflective person that I am today, and trying to like separate myself from being so party lined with certain things. I don't know if anybody has thought about this book since it, like I said, ironically, like Surprised by Joy is a more iconic book, though it is older, so that's why I say this is probably a bit of a deep cut. But yeah, if you've never read it, apparently it's available at used bookstores for $2, so go check it out. Finally, to wrap up this list of my non-seminary reading list recommendations, is a book that I did not read in seminary or college, but I have talked about it a lot, so I might as well give it the shout here. Delighting in the Trinity by Michael Reeves. This is one of the reasons why I love this book, is that it, of all of the books mentioned in this video, this is the book that hits that sweet spot, folks. If you've been around the show, you know what I'm talking about. It's short, compact, and packed with information. And that might be surprising, seeing how it's a book on the Trinity. But it's not an oversimplification, and it's not just trying to figure out what is an illustration that makes the Trinity make sense. It's understanding why the Trinity matters. Why, if we're going to believe in the Trinity, why does this matter, and how does this impact how I live daily if I believe in a Trinity, if I believe in a triune God. And Reeves does an incredible job of making this very complex topic very digestible, very practical, and just so easy to follow along. I love this book. I cannot recommend it enough. As much as the other books are like great and have made a profound impact in my life, of all 5 of these, that is the one you should start with first, is Delighting in the Trinity by Michael Reeves. But that's it for me for this video. Again, drop in the comments and let me know what books have made a profound impact in your spiritual journey. The podcast is currently on hiatus for the remainder of February, but we will be back in March for our 1 month long series, Celebrate March, where we're going to be highlighting people who were born in the month of March who have made an impact on religion, faith, and pop culture. It's a fun. It's going to be fun. It will be fun. I started recording it recently, and I'm really excited because it's going to be so broad and so diverse, all the things we're going to be talking about. But again, this is Brandon signing off, reminding you as always that theology is for everyone, so keep on studying.